We can't stay. We have to go. We've had an incredible time travelling around Italy for the last 6 weeks. We've seen breathtaking mountain scenery, visited some beautiful lakes. We've enjoyed exploring iconic city sites and lesser-known villages, and we've found some real hidden gems. We've eaten our body weight in pizza and pasta, and probably drunk a bit too much wine and Aperol Spritz. But sadly, that's all coming to an end for now, thanks to the Schengen 90-day rule.
Well, that's the reality of the Schengen shuffle.
Yeah, the reality is, as non-European citizens, non-EU citizens, we can't simply stay in Europe. So because I've had to leave the Schengen area, I've come to London for a while. In this video, we're going to explain how this impacts us and how it could affect you if you're travelling to Europe from Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, or any other non-European country. I started filming this video on the couch, but I realised that might be quite boring. I decided to come out and wander the streets of London and bring you along while I told you about this Schengen 90-day rule. So here's Buckingham Palace. One of the most common questions that we get asked is how we manage to travel around Europe long term. How do we stay? Do we need visas? How does it all work? So firstly, let's talk about Schengen. What is Schengen? The Schengen Zone consists of 29 countries that have abolished all of their internal border controls. What that means is that once you are inside the zone, you can move around quite freely without needing to get another visa or pass through any passport controls at all. Now, as Australians and New Zealanders, or if you're an American or Canadian, we don't actually need a visa to visit any of the European countries within the Schengen Zone. We're allowed to enter and stay for 90 days out of any 180 days. This is what's known as the Schengen 90-day rule. Now, this doesn't mean that you enter, stay for 90 days, and then you have to leave for 90 days before you can come back, although you can certainly do it that way if you want to. And this is where, for some people, it can get a little bit confusing, because basically it's a rolling 180 days, and within that 180 days you can come in and out as much as you like, so long as you don't spend any more than 90 days within the Schengen zone. If you come in, stay for 90 and then leave for 90 days, it's quite simple. But if, like us, you plan to go in and out of the zone, it can get a little bit complicated with the rolling 180 days. On any given day, you need to look back 180 days to make sure that you haven't spent more than 90 days in that period inside the Schengen zone. Now, if you're new to our channel, you might be wondering why we do this in and out and why we don't just stay for 90 days and then leave for 90 days. We're not actually travelling full time. It might seem like it because we release a travel video each week, but the reality is, Nigel, over to you. Nigel?
Well, I mean, it's easy for me to dodge the Schengen shuffle because I've got to go back to work 6 weeks at a time. So I work as a helicopter pilot in Saudi Arabia, and then I come back. So I go and do my thing for 6 weeks, and then Sue and I join, which we'll do again in Rome for the next leg of the journey. So, but yeah, it is a bit easier for me in that regard.
Now, currently, you need to get your passport stamped every time you go in and out of the Schengen zone. Obviously not within the zone because there are no more border controls in there. But when you're going from a non-Schengen country to a Schengen country, you need to get your passport stamped so that you always have proof of how many days you've spent in the zone. And we've found that both at airports and when we've been crossing with ferries, we have needed to ask to get our passports stamped. Having the stamp in there just means that if ever you're questioned by a border guard, you've got proof of when you've come in and out and that you've stayed within your 90 days. So how do we keep track of our days? I mean, counting with those stamps and writing things down would get confusing. We looked at a lot of different apps and computer programs until we came across this website. It's probably easiest if I show you an example. This is the website that we use to keep track of our 90-day allowance. It's called 90180.com. Now, we're not affiliated with this website in any way. We've just found it the best way to keep track of our days. So today is the 28th of November, and 180 days back is the 2nd of June. And you'll see all of this area is in the light grey, marking our current 180 days. Anything before that is in this dark grey area. So any days in there would not count. So let's have a look at our travel history. We entered the Schengen Zone on June the 20th when we flew into Frankfurt, Germany. We visited Germany, Belgium and France, and then we caught a ferry back to the UK on the 14th of July. So we spent 25 days inside Schengen. Now, our 180 days from the 20th of June would finish on the 16th of December. And you can see that on the 17th of December, that 25 starts to count down as the 180 days moves forward one day at a time. And one of those days that we were inside the zone would drop off from the beginning. Does that make sense? However, we didn't stay outside of Schengen. On the 14th of September, we took a ferry back to France, and then we stayed inside the Schengen zone until the 24th of October when we flew out of Rome. So this took us up to 66 days. And again, you'll see that on the 17th of December, it starts to count down again as those initial days in June are dropping off. But now we plan to re-enter the zone on the 6th of December and stay until the 14th of January. Now look at what happens. From the 17th of December until the 10th of January, the number stays the same. This is because as each of these 25 days in the zone drops off, we're replacing them with days in the zone. So that's these ones here where it doesn't go up. And then after the 10th of January, we're replacing days outside the zone with days inside the zone, so the count starts up again. Are you confused yet? Now, if we look even further into the future and plan to come back into Schengen after Nigel's next work swing, we would come into the zone on February the 28th and out again on April the 11th. But as you'll see, this would mean overstaying. So we're going to stay outside of the zone for that whole swing. We're going to explore some beautiful countries that we're very excited to show you until sometime around the middle of June, when we'll have plenty of Schengen allowance again. And this is why we need to use a calculator. There's no way we could keep track of all of this with just a pen and paper. Now, it's important to note that travel days count towards your 90-day allowance. So any part of a day that you spend within the Schengen zone counts towards the 90 days. Even if you're only in the zone for 1 minute, that counts. The authorities are currently in the process of introducing an EES, or an entry and exit system, where your passport will simply be scanned and all of your biometric data will be stored on that chip in your passport, so your fingerprints and your facial photo. So rather than getting your passport stamped and having to count days, that will all be recorded on a central computer system, which will make life a lot easier for any border guards who need to check. The start date for this EES has been pushed back a number of times. The latest date that we heard was the 10th of November 2024, but it still hasn't actually happened. So it is going to happen at some point in the future. We just don't know exactly when at this stage. And 6 months after the EES is introduced, so sometime in 2025, they're introducing an ETIAS, or a travel advice system, where you need to go online and register your details. So this is for all of those people who are from a country that doesn't require a visa for the European countries. So if you're from Australia, New Zealand, United States, Canada, and another 56 countries, you'll need to make sure that you've filled out that travel advice. It costs €7 and it's valid for 3 years. So understanding this rule and working within it is essential for long-term travellers like us. If we were to overstay, not only would we risk getting a fine, but also we would risk being excluded from the Schengen Zone for up to 3 years, and we're not willing to take that risk. We have often been asked, since we both have 2 passports, I'm a dual UK Australian citizen, Nigel is a dual New Zealand Australian citizen, and we've been asked, can you do a sneaky and show one passport one time and another passport another time? Well, in theory, yes, this might work. In reality, because they've got that biometric data on file and because, they've got those chips in those passports, there's really no way to cheat the system, and it's not worth it. We wouldn't even try. So if you're wondering why I'm in the UK, I have a UK passport, so I can stay here for as long as I like. And since Brexit, the UK is outside of Schengen. So any time I spend here doesn't count towards that 90-day Schengen allowance. While I've been here, I've been house sitting most of the time, but I've just come back to London for a couple of days. And I always love wandering around this city. There's so much to see here. It's just such a beautiful city, even though today it is absolutely freezing. Very typical grey London day. And then, of course, the obvious question is what happens to the van? We will be leaving the van at the long-term parking at Rome Airport. It is manned. There is video surveillance. I don't know about you, Nige, but I'll be worried every day.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. It's insured, so...
Yeah, as long as we don't have passports on there and,
Yeah, we'll take all our valuables.
We'll take all our gear, but yeah, it should be fine.
Consequently, we have to pack up the van. Obviously, we've got to consider all the food. Yeah, defrost the fridge, turn off the fridge.
And it's probably a good idea to drain the water as well.
Empty the toilet.
So that we don't
empty the grey water.
have frozen pipes, because it could get quite cold in Rome as well.
This is Rome. It's always a schmozzle. So we've arrived at the car park and people are just parked everywhere. We've actually paid for a spot and it's really tight to get in. So this is Nigel trying to get through. We're so close to these other cars. Gonna have to go back a bit. Unbelievable. Oh, this is so stressful. Pause. We found some space. We're miles away from the rest of the parking. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get
Can you double check? I know. We have to not think about that though.
There might be bouncing cars getting out.
Can you double check that gas? You just did. Okay.
All in a line?
Yeah. Locked.
And we're going to use the security. Then Guardian does its thing.
We've made it through. Well, we haven't been through passport control yet, which is kind of weird.
You're going to have your drinks and bits, right?
So we're having our final Italian pizzas, final Aperol spritzes for a few weeks.
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a, exciting /
Stressful. And Nigel doesn't get to drink for 6 weeks, so that's why he's having at least one Aperol. Aperols have arrived. I mean, how amazing do these pizzas look?
You came to the right place.
Yeah. Hopefully you now have a bit of a better understanding on how the 90-day rule works. how it's impacting us, and how it could be impacting you if you're planning to visit Europe from a non-European country in 2025 or beyond. If you have any questions at all about the 90-day rule, drop them in the comments down below, and we'll also put a link in the description of this video for the 9180.com website. As we said, we're not affiliated with this website in any way. It's just the best resource that we have found, and we've looked at quite a few to help us to keep track of our days. Thanks so much for watching this one. We will see you on the next video when we actually get to return